So a warm welcome. Thank you for watching this video. I'm going to be sharing a personal talk on why I asked for ordination into the Tiratana Buddhist Order, and this is part of our online event that we are running this weekend. So if you're thinking about asking for ordination, do listen to Vajratara's talk first, and then Amritavani will have shared her personal reflections, and I will be doing the same. So here goes. So I wanted to start my talk with a memory. So I wanted to start it with my public ordination. So my public ordination is one of the happiest days of my life. And you may or may not know, but it's at the public ordination where you get your kesa and you're fully ordained into the Tiratana Buddhist Order. So ordination into Tiratana consists of two parts: the private and the public ordination. So I just want to share this memory. So I walked into the shrine room, something that I had done many, many times before, because we were on quite a long retreat, and there was 16 other women who were being publicly ordained on that day, and they were dressed in blue, and I was wearing a kurta, which is like an Indian top, which Sangamani, who wasn't Sangamani then, she hadn't been ordained, had lent me, particularly for my public ordination. And when the kesa, actually this kesa went round my neck in the ceremony, that was when I somehow more deeply realised that this is what I've done. I know that might sound a bit crazy, but sometimes we kind of realise things on deeper levels. So I sort of realised, I've joined the order. It's not just about my own practice and whether I'm good enough or not. I had joined and committed to practice within this order. And interestingly, just kind of realising that, I felt a lot of relief, knowing that I didn't have to do it on my own. I felt delighted to be able to tread the path with others, in a way, practice shoulder to shoulder. So it's at your public ordination, it's at the public ordination that I got to hear my fellow various Dharma sisters' names, and they got to hear mine. And it reminded me of Mark Twain's quote. I want to share this with you because I feel it conveys the significance of the event that I'm trying to kind of get across. So he says, there are two most important days of your life: the day you were born and the day you realised why. So when I heard my friends' new names, each time I heard their individual names, something deeply resonated in me. It was like I could really see those qualities. It was almost as if something a bit more about them had been revealed. So it's almost like, poetically speaking, their essence had been revealed, became more clearer, became more visible. So hearing people's true names brought something into being. I felt much closer to the truth. Our potential comes into being against the odds based on conditions of deep practice. And there was something quite individual about it, but also something collective that's hard to put into words. So there was this incredible atmosphere up a mountain in Spain with 16 other women who joined the order that day. So how did I get there? So just to say, when I asked for ordination, bizarrely as this might sound, I didn't have a sense of actually being ordained or joining the order. So my journey has been one of doubt, self-doubt, and also one of faith. So just share, rewinding. I came across the Colchester Buddhist Centre in 2000. I was 24 years of age. I just finished my university degree and I was a bit lost, really. I was quite anxious and I really struggled with my confidence, although that wouldn't always come across. So I guess internally, my inner kind of feeling and my outer persona didn't add up. So how I felt inside and how other people saw me was different. And I sort of touched on it. It was like a level of low self-esteem, low confidence. And it would generally take the form of two kind of critical voices. One was like, not good enough. And the other one was like, you can't do it. And I don't know if you've ever had that feeling, but I try and outrun, or I try and just work very, very hard to not experience that really. But somehow it was an ongoing strain, and I couldn't really outrun this part of myself. So when I came in contact with the Colchester Buddhist Centre, the local order members seemed ordinary in a way, but there was something around how they were, and how they communicated. So, how they talked about the Dharma, that felt very alive, felt very fresh and striking. I felt in contact with something, almost a tangible environment that felt different. And I guess one way of putting it was that I felt in contact with meaning. As I started to understand the Dharma, communicate more with others, it felt like bits of myself in relation to others and how they were started to become a bit more reconfigured, almost kind of like line up a bit more. So I guess what I mean by that is the local order members, I was thinking particularly Hashaprabha, Samanta Badri, Tulimati, they had a real effect on me. The study groups, the Sangha nights, the day events, it sort of drew something out of me, and I kind of got glimpses of myself. One way of talking about it, a bit more at my best, a bit more who I could be, like little glimpses of that. Yeah. So I became a Mitra in 2002 because Samanta Badri encouraged me to. And initially I thought, oh yeah, I want to become a Mitra because in those days, in order to access Mitra study, you needed to become a Mitra. It's changed now. But actually deeper down, I think I did want to publicly affirm that I felt that I was a Buddhist. And just reflecting back on it was something like the Dharma just really made sense. It was like I did feel at times I was really in contact with the truth. And I remember Bante's book, Vision and Transformation, the Noble Eightfold Path, just really spoke to me as a way of knowing dukkha, knowing difficulty is difficulty, but there also being a way out. And I wanted to commit to it. I knew that committing to it would make a difference. And also what really helped was my good friends, particularly Samanta Badri, just really believed in me. And that helped me kind of do it almost, kind of do it with those doubts and with those fears, of whether I was really up to it. So why did I transition from becoming a Mitra? So why did I ask for ordination? What happened was, I think I was a bit like I continued to practice and then other sides kind of revealed themselves. So it became clear in a way what my working ground was. So I could really see that Tiratana offered, I think Bante talks about this, a method of personal development. We could talk about it as a system of practice. But it offered a way of kind of really working on oneself in the context of friendship. I somehow realised that I really needed a path of training. I'd done a lot of different things, but I'd started to get glimpses that I could be more. So in a way, I could make it sound quite rational, but there was also something quite intuitive about it that would be hard to put into words. Yeah, what I ended up realising was that it was only by going for refuge to the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, that I would break out of this inner poverty, this self-doubt. They talk about being plagued by self-doubt. It can feel quite tough, quite fixed, quite separate. And I realised I really needed to go for refuge in order to be able to love myself and therefore others. So breaking down the subject-object divide, another way of talking about it, was really my heart's deepest wish, and I kind of knew somehow it was possible. The ordination process, I thought, offered something like that. So engaging the process, I learned to fall back on the Dharma refuge. I learned in a way to turn towards my experience and not try and outrun it, which didn't work. So I started to become more interested in my experience, and the metta bhavana, the love and kindness meditation practice that we're taught, really made a really, really big difference to me. I sort of started to become bigger, to hold unpleasant feelings that would arise. Sometimes we talk about it as unpleasant Vedana. And to kind of see that that was not necessarily a sign that anything was going wrong. Often it was just unpleasant feeling or even old stories that would arise in the present moment. So we sometimes talk about that as vipaka. So these stories would come up like ghosts from the past, but that I would end up bringing them to life by thinking about them and assuming that the stories were true. So I started through regular practice, through engaging with classes, through starting a training for ordination group. I started in a way to become a bit more whole, really start to dissolve this inner poverty. I learned to kind of recognize self-doubt as self-doubt, and actually self-doubt in the Buddhist context, seeing yourself as inferior, is a conceit. It's still how we kind of construct self, and that actually was a habit. And I got glimpses of something else flowing through, really, in a way of going beyond worldly success and failure. This kind of sense of not being good enough and learning to just try and take the next creative step. So if I could recognize dukkha as dukkha, turn towards my experience, actually there was a response. So as I said, something started to flow through me. There was this quality of openness. I started to get a bit of a glimpse of kind of what lies beyond self-clinging. So in a way, little by little, I started to internalize the refuges. So at times of difficulty, I really tried to turn towards the Dharma, or bring a good friend to mind. Like, how would they respond in this situation? Or even call on higher power. So engage in pujas, really bring the Buddha to mind, actually. So I decided to ask for ordination because I realized I needed to go for refuge. But why the Tiratana order? So in a way, I could give you a list. I realised that I needed a context within which to practice and train, and also equal ordination for men and women was really important to me. You know, commitment being primary, lifestyle being secondary. So I loved working in mental health. I loved helping people, and I really enjoyed trying to bring my practice and these sides of myself into my work. That felt very, very meaningful. So being part of the world, trying to take my going for refuge out in the different dimensions of my life and be more myself in those contexts felt very, very important. So also what else was kind of crucial was friendship. So I'm not going to say that the Sangha was always easy, but there were people around me that I could see continue to grow and change, that were really taking themselves on. And I just found that ongoingly inspiring. So being around Ratnadharani, just one example, I could mention some of her qualities. She didn't collude or polarize, and I just found that really something. She was very ethical, kind, but also razor clear, you know. So being in contact with friends kind of helped kind of galvanize that will to keep going, because actually it's not that easy to keep going on a spiritual path. Being around others and keeping on turning up to those events helped create conditions where I was able to stay focused on what was really important to me and get glimpses in a way of who I could be and who others were. So what I realized was when I was in contact with gratitude, I didn't need perfection. So there's something more intangible that I'm starting to touch on. So why the Tiratana Buddhist Order? So funny enough, I came in contact with that 20 years ago when I came through the doors of the Colchester Buddhist Centre. That something drew me there, and something continues to draw me on in this context. So the last thing that I wanted to share is why I joined this order was, well, the symbol of the order being the 1,000-armed Avalokiteshvara. Avalokiteshvara is the Bodhisattva of compassion, and Vajratara mentions Avalokiteshvara in her talk. So the myth of the order is the image of the 1,000-armed Avalokiteshvara. So some of you might know the myth, but simply put, Avalokiteshvara sets out on a journey to change the world, to alleviate suffering. He didn't succeed, and he ends up needing to call upon his friend in desperation, calls upon his guru, the Buddha Amitabha, who comes and transforms him into the 1,000-armed Avalokiteshvara. So the message from this myth, the message from this symbol is it's not really possible to alleviate suffering by oneself. We need others. Together we can bring about something bigger than the sum of its parts. So coming back to my public ordination, it was one of the happiest days of my life. And I think it was because something of that quality of Avalokiteshvara had been brought into being and was strongly present on that day. So really hearing people's names, their qualities, individual qualities being drawn out, their diverse qualities being drawn out, it felt like there was energy in the room, energy of trust, shared values, our common practices. So really, our going for refuge felt tangible. And it was a bit like that figure of Avalokiteshvara with the 1,000 arms, each of us a separate, distinct hand of Avalokiteshvara, but somehow was held together by our shared understanding of going for refuge, our shared commitment. And the only way I could kind of describe it is it felt a bit as if the boundary between myself and others just were no longer present. And that's the goal of our spiritual life. And that's what I keep kind of committing to. And then those qualities, that aspiration is what we took out into the world. So Lama Govinda, Buddhist teacher and founder of another movement, describes the image of Avalokiteshvara as it's an image that points to a particular quality. So he says, it's an image that points to a particular quality of consciousness, a consciousness that transcends the individual and the collective. So the word for ordination in the Buddhist tradition in Pali is sambhara, bound. So bound in a very positive way, not holding you down. So what we've been given, we also want to pass on. So we too can pass on what we've received. We pass on the teachings from a basis of friendship and connectedness. And this desire to pass it on is to be a force of good in the world, is this desire to alleviate suffering, which Avalokiteshvara represents, which is at the heart of our collective imagination in this Buddhist tradition. So at some point, asking for ordination and joining the order came together. So for many people, that is together. For myself, it was a bit of a journey of needing to move towards wholeness, to get a glimpse of what lay beyond that, wanting to kind of share that and realizing that is what ordination was really about. So just want to end on one of my favourite quotes from Joseph Campbell, and it's called The Hero Path. We do not even have to risk the adventure alone, for the heroes of all time have gone before us. The labyrinth is thoroughly known. We have only to follow the thread of the hero path, and where we thought to find an abomination, we shall find love. And where we had thought to slay another, we shall slay ourselves. Where we had thought to travel outwards, we shall come to the centre of our own existence. And where we have thought to be alone, we shall be with all the world. Thank you very much for listening.